My name is Ivy Starnes. I'm a gaited horse trainer in Fort Worth, Texas, and joining me is Jessica Gonzalez. I can't even remember how long I've been following you and Empowered Equines, but Jessica does so much with clicker training, positive reinforcement, working with kids, troubled horses. You have a rescue, and we'll talk more about that. But she did a post on Valentine's Day talking about the care system with horses and how the horses get a lot of their needs fulfilled with other equines, but then how can we kind of get into that world with horses? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself first?
So basically everything you said, I run a horse rescue. I started learning about positive reinforcement horse training about 12 years ago, and I love it. It's kind of just what I've always been looking for as a way to communicate with horses. But I think the part that was difficult for me is it felt very mechanical, and I'm all about the relationship and the
Yes.
connection, and kind of seeing horses as an emotional being, and I feel like behaviorism tends to overlook or dismiss the emotional part because it's not very concrete and it's not very scientific, and we don't want to anthropomorphize, but they do have emotions, and we can't just pretend they don't exist. So I was trying to find kind of the balance of information there of like, well, where are the facts, what matters, what doesn't, and how do we use the fact that they have emotions and help them feel good emotions. And that's what kind of led me down the path to neuroscience. And Jacques Panksepp, he's kind of the modern, most up-to-date researcher on emotional neuroscience, how the brain and body create emotions, and then how that reflects throughout all different species. Because if we can see the same parts of the brain working the same way, we can correlate that.
Yeah.
That means that they have the same emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's about the first time that anybody really said, yes, animals do have emotions, they do feel this way, and it is real, and it's not just you anthropomorphizing.
I think it's really neat to point out that like the behavioral science does really look at them sort of sans the emotions. Like we know they're there because our goal is for them to regulate their emotions, but we're not, yeah, we don't talk about how can we connect with their emotions or really notice that. And so many of us, we want that connection with horses. That's kind of why we got started.
Yeah, especially why did we choose positive reinforcement? Negative reinforcement works. It's
It
very
does.
effective. It's a very effective tool. So why would we choose to switch to positive reinforcement if we have a horse that's trained and being trained well? Well, the biggest reason is usually because it makes the horse happier, and you have a more happy relationship usually when it's done well and when you
Yes.
have everything organized correctly. But how can we say, well, it's because it makes them happy if we don't even acknowledge that they have emotions?
Yeah.
So, or which emotions they feel and how it's elicited. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you give just like a little bit of a rundown of kind of what you were talking about in your post on Valentine's Day, and then any stories or anything you can share. I know it's a very broad question, but this is what I want to talk about.
Yeah, so I kind of talked a bit about the care system. So Panksepp is the neuroscientist who kind of found the root of our emotions in our physical body and in our brain. And rather than looking at it as before Panksepp, we kind of looked at all emotions as like, well, what can I possibly feel? And we organized them into groups based on how we felt. So when we look at the Darwinian concepts of emotions, they have like joy and surprise, and they have like sadness and that sort of thing. Whereas Panksepp looked at more the physical location in our body, what hormones are produced, what neurons are zapped, and how does that create an emotion and how does that feel? And then how does that reflect behaviorally? And
But that seems very, very scientific to me.
it's pretty scientific and it's pretty factual. And it's funny because he got started because when he worked in labs using lab rats, he found that if you tickled them, they would laugh. And he said, that's a very human emotion. And from there, he's like, let's look into that. Why do they laugh? What is being triggered in their brain to make them laugh? And is it joy? Are they laughing because it feels good, or does that mean something else to rats? And then that's kind of what got him started down this path. And so he's found 7 systems. He calls them systems of emotions, and that's rage, fear, and grief are the 3 that generally feel bad to most species, except sometimes rage can feel good in some like predatory
Yes.
situations. It can be kind of a little give and take. It's a very effective emotion, but it doesn't necessarily feel good to the learner or to the being. So those are the 3 that generally feel bad. And then there's lust, care, and play. And those
Okay.
are the 3 that generally feel good. They can be frustrating if they're not being satiated. If they
Mm-hmm.
feel lust and they're really horny and then they're not getting what their needs met, they can get frustrated, or we can get frustrated. But then if generally they feel good when they are satiated, when their needs are being met.
Yeah.
And then there's the seeking system, which is the 7th, and that's the system that looks to get the good feelings and avoid the bad feelings, and it's the problem solving system.
Yeah.
That's our motivation. So in the Valentine's post, I really talked mostly about the care system,
Yes.
because I think as animal owners, that's kind of care and play are the 2 systems we really want to see the most. They're the ones that feel good, and we can leave lust to them. We don't need to worry about that one. So
Yeah.
we'll just focus on care and play. And I think the care system is easily overlooked and misunderstood. We think of it as something like a mother does with a child, but that's kind of the relationship we're forming with our animals that we train with positive reinforcement, because we're the food provider, we're the source of safety, we're kind of, we plan their schedule every day, organize what they're going to do and how they're going to do it.
It's true.
We kind of plan, we do everything that a mother would do, even in nature or in domestication. So I really wanted to talk about what is the care system and why it's important, and then how do we help that, because the care system, it kind of negates all the bad feelings.
Yeah.
If they have strong care feelings, they feel safe and secure in their body and in their environment, and they are free to play or free to express themselves, and they feel very comfortable. And that's where we want our learners to be when no matter what you're training, that's the emotional state you want to start in.
Yeah, and I like how you talked about, I'm just going to read a little bit from your post. So, because you mentioned some of the stuff we just talked about, and then you said, many people struggle with horses who exhibit separation anxiety related behavioral problems. I mean, horses that are what we call buddy sour or barn sour, that would be the separation anxiety. You said not wanting to leave their peers, their farm, balking on trails, bolting home, or being over threshold when out of sight of their friends. In these cases, what we're seeing is that the horse's care system is only being fulfilled by their equine peers. They are dependent on their herd to meet their emotional care needs. It would be unkind, even cruel, to push a horse beyond this threshold, and often include a good deal of fallout behaviorally, like anything that we see as negative when they're trying to get back to their buddies. You also said we also want to be sure we aren't using positive reinforcement to coerce a horse beyond their threshold for comfort or safety. I'm pretty sure I've been guilty of it, but probably less so recently, as I have really been focusing on paying attention to the horse's emotional state and their comfort level and their thresholds. You said by luring a horse with food outside their comfort zone, we not only set ourselves up for failure, but we also poison the food. At some point, the need for safety in their peers is going to outweigh the desire for food. Here, it's not about the food. Now the food has become something the horse sees as a risk, not an opportunity. And I think so many riders out there, and no matter what horses they have, need to hear that, because like it brings it back to that it's not about food, but that how much you said that happens because they get all of their care needs fulfilled, that safety, you said the freedom to express themselves, that only happens with other horses. And I can see that being a huge issue when we're trying to interact with them and have a relationship.
Absolutely it is. I think that so when we talk about separation anxiety, we're talking about the grief or panic system. In Panksepian terms, it's that system is right along par with fear. And the biggest difference is that panic and grief is related to social insecurity, whereas fear is related to physical insecurity. Something is risking physical harm, but they're of equal, even probably greater value.
Yes.
If they feel I'm apart from my family, if they feel shunned, if they feel condemned or different or not allowed into the group or anything along that line, it's the reason we feel shame. But horses may or may not feel shame, but they definitely recognize if they're being ostracized from a group. And that insecurity can be as terrifying as a predator chasing them, because it does mean social insecurity. And for horses in particular, social security is extremely important. Horses are a very social species, and that security is very important to them, especially as prey species. Instead of predators, they really rely on each other. I think for most horses and most people, horses can only find that care, comfort in other horses and not in their human partners. A lot of times, even not intentionally, we might, even if we're using positive reinforcement training, if we go in and we train a behavior, they do the behavior we want, they get their treats, and then we go home, the horse might say, oh, that was fun, but it doesn't feel like love. It just feels like, well, that was a fun thing to do, cool. But it doesn't give them that same comforting security that family does. And so it's really important to take that extra time to not just use positive reinforcement, but also to build a relationship, to spend time listening to their communication, spend time together where you're just hanging out, or you're scratching where they feel itchy, and you're kind of making them feel good in themselves, in their body and in their space. And the more you can provide that, the more they will look to you as a member of their family and a security member, particularly a mother type figure. That kind of maternal feelings is really what the care system is all about.
Wow, that just makes me think of like a whole lot of questions. Okay, what are some? Oh, so actually, well, the question I really want to ask, which might be going like in different tangents, but I've done a lot of clicker training with horses that I've trained, owned. How do I know whether I've been taking them? I mean, I've got a pretty good idea, but how would I know if I've used the food to take them over threshold? like what could I start to watch for to make sure that I'm not doing that, to using food to lure them where they aren't comfortable?
Yeah, I think that's really, really common, especially people who are new to positive reinforcement. We're given this tool that is so powerful. I mean, we can teach a horse to stand there and let a vet stick their hand up their bum. I mean, if we can if we can convince them to tolerate something that invasive and that painful, we can convince them to do anything.
Yeah.
And while that's really valuable in a vet situation, it's not valuable in a real life situation where we want our horse to have autonomy and we want them to feel safe and we want them to be honest with us. A lot of times horses will say, okay, I'll do it for the food. Okay, I'll do it for the food. And then all of a sudden they explode and they run away. And you're like, where'd that come from? Because you didn't see any signs, because they're desperately trying to do it for the food, but now they're over threshold. And I think the biggest thing that you want to look for is all those little signs. Listen to the honesty before they need to be loud. If we're using the example of literally walking them away from a herd and feeding as you go, if you're walking them away from the herd and they start looking back and they start bringing their attention back to the herd or needing to stop for long minutes to chew, and sometimes if I go to hand feed and they grab the food more aggressively, they like snatch it out of my hand instead of just eat it gently, or they might grab the food and then turn and look back to their herd, or even I'll ask them to walk on and you'll just notice this little pause, like maybe all right, and then they'll do it. But if every time you ask them to walk on, they walk on promptly, and then this time there's a 2-second pause first, you're seeing that conflict start to rise up in them. They're starting to be like, I'm really not sure if I should. And I think we really need to take those moments seriously, because the less seriously we take them, the quicker it turns into an explosion, you know?
No, and it makes so much sense because I've been practicing the cat H, which on the best level for me was it taught me to focus in so much on the horse's body language, to what they were comfortable with and what they weren't. And so you would tell people, like you said, like just in this case of leading your horse away from the other horses, if they're hesitant or already looking worried, even if they come with you, it's telling you that this is over threshold already, or we're at that threshold.
Yep. We're rapidly approaching it, yeah. And I think we have 3 thresholds, really. We have like the threshold where they notice that there's a situation going on. Oh, we're walking away from the herd. And then there's the threshold where they begin to feel like conflict. And then there's the threshold where, no, this is aversive and I don't like this. And that's the threshold that we really need to stay below. And we tend to push up till we see, I don't like this. I don't want to do this anymore. And then we're like, okay, we'll listen now. But if we keep waiting until they're all the way up at the no way, then you're really pushing them quite too far. And now they're going to get to that no way sooner and sooner because they're like, I'm not even going to try.
Yeah.
But if we can listen at the, I don't know, we're going to be able to progress that more quickly. We're going to say, okay, I hear you. Let's step back for a minute and then we'll readdress it later. I also think that I personally, if I'm working with a horse with separation anxiety, my approach is not to just start walking them away from a herd and clicking and treating as they go. I really think that's an ineffective method. I think you can successfully lure a horse away from the herd, but it's not going to work long term. And I think that you're really not fixing the underlying problem, that the horse doesn't see you as a caregiver. They don't see you as a source of safety and comfort. And until I address that, I'm not going to be able to change. If they don't feel safe with me, they don't feel safe with me. And
I love that.
Yeah. I'm not going to fix that by just dragging them away from their friends.
That's a great point. That is really good. And you talked about that. So like I'll read this paragraph from your post. You said, so how do we become the source of care for our horses? The first key ingredient is a tough one, time. Time is hard for us humans as it's one of our most valuable resources, but being so valuable, it matters a good deal to those who it's given to. By sharing space and being present with our horses, by spending time with our horses, we become part of their social unit. Not as another horse, but as another being who chooses to share their valuable life with one another. Coexisting creates a beautiful, gentle, forceless connection between beings.
Yeah. And I think that time really is, it's hard for us because, I mean, who wants to just sit in a field all day? Our horses do.
All day.
Not necessarily, yes. And, I mean, you can find stuff to do while you're out there, like reading or whatever, but I think that time really is one of the most important things that we can give to them. But it has to be time that's spent where the horse feels not just good, yay, you're giving me treats, but feels comfortable in themselves, feels safe, feels like they're not being manipulated. And I have one pony in particular who, she's a mini, and I think this happens really chronically with minis, where they've never actually been trained anything, because you can just do whatever you want to them. You know? Yeah, you can, if you want to pick up their foot, you don't have to teach them, you just pull their foot off the ground. And she, even when we started positive reinforcement with her, she was like, great, now you have another way to manipulate me. And she really didn't enjoy it. And she would, you know, you'd click and you treat, she'd take her treat, she's super food motivated, she loves food, but then she'd spend 5 minutes searching around on the ground before she'd look back up and be like, all right, I guess I'll do it again. And I mean, we'd be asking for nothing, stand still, you know?
Yeah.
And she just couldn't do it. And it was because she didn't care. She didn't, you were just another person telling her what to do, regardless of if she got rewards for it. It wasn't about that. She just felt manipulated. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't pick up on in their relationships with their horses, if the horse is feeling manipulated. But I think we see it in latency, like you cue a behavior and they'll do it. You know, fine, give me the treat. When you're with a horse and it feels like this is all about the food, you're probably seeing a horse who is being manipulated by the food. And that's great. That's a big step up than being manipulated by force. But it's still just, somebody just asked, is the equine brain capable of the concept of manipulation? That's a really good question. I think yes, maybe not to the level that we do in the mind of like, somebody is tricking me or coercing me, but I think they definitely feel conflict. This is not what I wanted to do right now. I wanted to take a nap in the sun, and you're telling me to do this. And fine, I guess I'll do it. Give me my treat. You know?
Yeah, no, I can think of horses that seemed kind of like that.
Yeah, and she's a very dramatic version of that. We'll be doing agility with her, and she'll just, you know, you'll click, you'll treat, and she'll just walk right past you and be like, no, I'm going to go do this now. And you're like, okay, see you tomorrow.
So that's a dramatic version of, you know, what we're talking about. But let's say someone has a horse who they feel doesn't really look to them like the mom, like that they what would you say people could start doing right now, even if they're not doing positive reinforcement with their horses? What could they do to sort of change that so the horse sees them differently?
I think one of the biggest things you can do is go out with them in their group and spend, if you can, find their itchy spots, scratch their itchy spots, bring hay and spread it out for everybody. It doesn't have to be valuable food, because then you've got all the horses fighting for food. Just scatter some hay around. You hang out with them while they're eating. Sharing food is, I think, a really big bonding moment for horses. Horses don't share food. They only share food with people that or horses that they trust and they feel like is family. Otherwise, they resource guard. So if they're sitting with you, eating their food, sitting in comfort, you're scratching where they're itchy, that's really, I think, mutual grooming is
Okay.
probably the strongest display of social care between two horses. And I think that that's something we can do with them. And while we're with them, listen to their communication. And I think that that is among the most important things that we can do for a horse, is to listen to them. And if they turn to groom you, put your hand out so they can groom your hand. You don't want them to
Yes.
groom your side and bite you or something, but
you want to respond or notice the reciprocal that they're doing.
And if they want to take a step away and they're like, this isn't really comfortable for me, no thank you, respect that, because you're here to respect their body and their autonomy, and to show them that you care about them and that you're listening to them. So you don't need to go over and be like, no, I'm grooming you now, stand still so I can groom you. That's kind of defeating the purpose. So you're really gonna just go and see what you can do to make them feel good, and just spending that time with them. I remember I had a Clydesdale who I got her, and I wanted to do my tutorial videos with her. So I trained her all the behaviors that she needed to know, all the way up to being able to ride her. And she was brilliant. She's a really smart horse. She's really well adjusted. She had no issues to overcome, and she learned everything. I mean, it was like 3 months. She learned everything she needed to know up to riding.
Wow.
And she just was really easy. But I noticed that as I'm working with her, her response to cues was slow. She was very thinking about the food. Like, it was click and then like, okay, food now. Like, really focused on that, and wasn't really looking me in the eye, wasn't really aware that I was a human being and I'm here with you as another being. And I don't know how to explain that in a physical way, but I really felt that she's not even seeing me. She's just seeing a food dispenser. And I know that it takes time, so I wasn't bothered by that. I was like, she's happy, she's getting her treats, she's doing what I want, we're good. And then one day I cued her to do a hip away, and she stomped her foot instead of hip away. And I backed up and I was like, oh, something's bothering you. So obviously there must be some issue here. Later I found out with a chiropractor that her SI was out. But it wasn't about that. It was about the moment that I asked her to do a behavior and she said no. And I said, okay. And then from that moment on, our relationship was totally different. She was open, she was honest, she started to say no. Sometimes if I asked her to do something, she'd be like, I don't know if I want to do that. Or like I would cue her to go away from me to get to a target.
Yeah.
And she'd be like, I'd rather stay over here. And I realized that all of a sudden we had a relationship, we had communication, and it was two ways, and it wasn't just order, response, reward. It was truly a communication now. And it was because I listened to her saying no. And it only took one experience for her, and some horses it might take a few. But that moment where she realized, I am allowed to say no. I am allowed to have an input on this. This is a conversation, not just me barking orders.
Yeah.
And I think that was huge. Especially, she wasn't a horse who experienced much punishment. She had very little human interaction at all. So it's not like she was scared of punishment. She just thought, well, I have to do this. And yeah.
That's amazing. I feel like we should do like a whole nother video talk on giving horses autonomy. I feel like that would be so valuable for people too another time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think that autonomy is kind of the foundation of care. Care is looking for autonomy. We're giving our horses permission to be themselves, to feel like themselves, to express themselves in safe and healthy and
Right.
appropriate ways. You're not allowed to just come lunging at us and
Yes.
be crazy. um, but they shouldn't want to. They should be like, oh, that's my human. I always feel nice when I'm around them, And I mean, most of our horses, they see us coming in and they're like, oh, awesome. This is time to
Yes.
play. We're going to have fun. And if, it takes time. I mean, some horses, there are definitely horses where it's many months before it's about anything other than just food. But that's fine. It takes time. But once you really have time to groom them, scratch their butts, find their itchy spots, and the Clydesdale I was talking about.
Yeah.
One thing that she learned is that whenever we fill up water buckets, she'll come and she'll stand on top of the water bucket and want you to spray her udder clean. And she'll like hold up a leg like a dog. And so
Wow.
she's learned how to communicate to us what she wants. And
Yeah.
that's the care system. She's looking to me to solve her problems, to fulfill her needs. And she's like, oh, there's a human. She's got fingers. She's got a hose. She makes everything feel nice,
It makes me think, so my mare Macaroni, she's the Palomino. She was I first worked with her in 2019 as part of the Heart of Phoenix, the Appalachian Trainer Face-Off Challenge. But when I got her, I started doing just like target training and positive reinforcement with her. And within a matter of days, she had gone from I don't want to be touched to wanting to be with me to she learned she's very gentle. She would back up very slowly and put her butt right by you so you could scratch her. But it was gentle, like you know, the
Yeah,
not and she will still do that to this day. Like, here, can you scratch me? And
yeah,
so if the horse is doing that appropriately, right? You know, not dangerous. That's
yeah.
a good thing. We're saying that they want that interaction, and it's not about the food.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a way for it's all about the two-way communication. And the more we can um, listen to them and respond to them appropriately, I think that's building that care system. Again, everything care is nurturing and um, comfort. You're providing them comfort. And if that is hosing off their udder, I mean, that's comforting to them. And, it's what they like, and it's what makes them feel good. And some horses figure it out quickly, and some don't. I mean, we
Yeah.
have another Clydesdale who we call it her butt mugging, because she like walks backwards to you. She's like, scratch this, and she's really clear about exactly what she wants. She'll hold her tail out of the way.
Wow.
So
And so
they're
oh, go ahead.
they're very good at communicating once you start listening. They're very good at it.
So it sounds like you're saying, so one, we talked about just go spend time with them. Like you said, mutual grooming, scatter some hay, sit with them, read a book. And it also sounds like with some of the other horses you've worked with, sometimes at the beginning it is just about food. Like that, it'll start out that way. But
Yeah.
then as you spend more time and trying to do that nurturing, you find that it does change.
Oh, definitely. And
Okay.
I think especially if we keep our training at a really respectful level, like for example with that Clydesdale who was really like compliant with her training,
Yeah.
I felt like I don't really want to get on her yet because I don't feel like she's really like I feel like she's obeying my orders. She's not choosing to do this. And it doesn't feel like it's a choice at this point. And I really just decided that I wasn't going to push it to riding. And she had not been ridden previously,
Okay.
so it wasn't like it was safe to just hop
Yes.
on anyway. So
You wanted her to tell you it was
I
okay.
did. I wanted her to feel like she could walk away from the mounting block if she didn't want me to ride her. That way we didn't find out 5 minutes later when she's having a bucking fit. I'd rather find out when I ask nicely.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think that it really is. It's about time. It's about time fulfilling their needs. It looks like somebody posted that they said their horse thinks of them like the horse is the mom and the human is the baby. It's funny, we have a young Mustang. He's only 4 years old, and we got him when he was really young, and he was really, really aggressive when we got him. And we had some lifestyle things that happened here, particularly about social bonding. We had put him in with our two ponies who became his parents. But when he outgrew them, he was getting too hard for them. He was knocking them down. And so we had to separate them. And when that happened, he became the most aggressive horse I've ever met. Like full-blown lunging at people. You could not work with him in full contact where we had before. And it took us a while to figure out that it was because we'd really damaged his social standard, his social security, by separating him from his ponies. And even I put him in with other horses. He was in with my draft mares, but they weren't engaging him in a parental way. They were kind of ignoring him and just kicking him if he bothered them. And so he totally lost that bond that he had with the ponies. And they were on the other side of the fence from him, but it was not the same. And he developed a relationship with one of our volunteers, a young girl who worked with him for about a year, and she still works with him, and did all of his training. And he's doing really, really well now. But when she's training him, we noticed if something scared him, he would herd her away from the scary thing, and like very very stallion like neck snaked and we realized that he was treating her like she was the baby, and like get away from that, that's not safe. Like that's dangerous, you stay away. And it was funny because we were like, all this time we've been calling him the baby, and but in his mind he's the stallion, and he's the one responsible for everybody's safety, and all this pressure on him to be perfect all the time. And even with clicker training, we've only ever used clicker training with him, and food, he is like, I have to earn my food. I have to get the right food. And it's a lot of pressure to be right all the time. And
that's true. That's true.
Yeah. It's like, even if kids are always getting good grades, it's a lot of pressure to always get good grades. And
even if they're getting praised by their parents and they've never had anything negative from their parents, there's that feeling of, oh, well, I need to keep doing this.
Yeah. And the first bad grade is like devastating. So the first withheld click, ooh, what did I do wrong? Why didn't she click that? And then there's fear and insecurity, and that's where having a relationship that feels maternal and feels mutual and compassionate, they can have the comfort to make mistakes and have the safety to say, oh, I don't know if I like this. Oh, that's kind of weird. You know, they can communicate those things without fear of, what if I fail? What if I screw up? Because mommy's there, you know? And I think it can be hard to transition that relationship once the horse is like, no, I've got all the pressure on me. I'm the caretaker. And I think it can be hard to transition that. And it does take time, especially for those really firmly independent, firmly I control everything horses.
The person who commented that, Chrissy, she you gave her some advice on what to help her mare with the anxiety during like rides and stuff, I think. I think she reached out to you. So yeah, I think you had given her some suggestions about targeting nose to hand and then blowing. So she's been working on that too. So, and her mare is very, very, very independent, very intense, and has a variety of behaviors that you wouldn't put toward, that for me, and I think also for Chrissy, is like she's a very confident horse, but then will spook it at a random thing. And on a trail ride that's not competitive, she is calm. She will go in front, she'll go in the middle, she'll go behind. But then on competition, like that, all those things that are very normal for her on a day-to-day basis go out the window, and there's a lot of anxiety.
It's almost like she feels that extra pressure of like, no, I can't make a mistake here. Like in a regular day, it's okay to make mistakes, but not today.
Yeah.
And that added pressure can be so much. And the technique of deep breathing, that is a control unleashed technique. So I want to shout out to Leslie. And
Okay.
she's the one who came up with that. She designed it for reactive dogs.
Yes.
And it's all about just capturing deep breathing. And that, honestly, that was such a cool response to be able to teach horses, to be able to teach them to, like, if we had a child who was getting nervous and worked up, we would say, it's okay, calm down, take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath, yes.
And that's what we want to be able to tell our horses.
Okay.
Right, take a
that.
deep breath. And if you can get them, okay, I can breathe. You can't do anything if you can't breathe.
Yes. I mean, I have my clients, I'm like, stop, take a deep breath every time you stand.
Yeah. And it wouldn't be nice to tell your horse that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yes, it is scary.
We should do another talk where we can talk about that. But I want to wrap it up because I don't want to take up too much of your time. I learned so much today. But I want to briefly talk. So you have your not-for-profit that you have, and I'll share a link to that. So just really quickly tell us about what you do with for your not-for-profit.
So we're a horse rescue primarily. We focus on hospice care for draft horses who have worked really hard their whole lives. We try to take in horses that wouldn't survive in the real world and try to give them a soft landing, a few years to get spoiled. But since I'm so bad at saying no, we have a lot of other horses. So we also have a baby Mustang. We have a couple ponies, and we had a gaited mare, Taina. And generally, again, it tends to be hospice situations. But one thing that we really like to do is to teach them autonomy and to give them a chance to feel free and safe and comfortable inside their body and in their relationship with humans, and have a chance to experience that after a time when things maybe weren't so good for them.
Yeah.
And our biggest focus is teaching the next generation about positive reinforcement horse training. And so we are run primarily by young volunteers, mostly teenage girls, and they come, they do all the chores, and they train all of our horses and get to learn about positive training.
Yeah.
So that's what our nonprofit is.
And where are you located again?
We're in York, Maine.
York, Maine. Okay.
Southern Maine, yeah.
Just gonna have all this written down in the description when I upload to like YouTube and stuff. And then also you have a book.
I do have a book. Yes.
And I don't know, it might show up flipped on the video, but it is Equine Empowerment. Yeah. And the stuff we've been talking about, where in the book can they find that? Because you said this is in here.
Yep. So there are 3 sections of the book. The first section is just understanding who horses are, their ethology. The second section is behavioral science, so that's how to clicker train. And then the third section is emotions, and that's all the neuroscience of emotions. And I go into each system, how we can help avoid the bad systems and promote the good systems. Yeah.
Okay, so if you get her book, and I'll put the link in the description, but chapter 3 is going to go, I mean, all the book is good, but you can also find more about what we're talking about in chapter 3.
Yep. Somebody just mentioned that horses who have that type of pressure and anxiety can get ulcers, and that magnesium can help. There's a lot of nutritional and pharmaceutical ways to help horses with anxiety, and I think the pharmaceuticals are growing by the day. We use pharmaceuticals for dogs very easily. There's a lot of options now for dogs who have issues. but in the horse world, it's not very common yet. I
Yeah.
think especially because you can't compete them on certain ones. Magnesium's a great one. It's a muscle relaxer, so it can help, and it can also cause diarrhea, but it can help keep their muscles soft, which can help keep everything soft. There's a couple others. There's anything with tryptophan. Tryptophan, a lot of people think that tryptophan is sedative, but it's actually, it promotes serotonin.
Okay.
It helps convert serotonin in the body, which is a comfort feeling. So that's actually something, that's why a lot of calmers have tryptophan in it. And it's not a sedative. It is something that just makes them feel a little better. And I really recommend that. And anything with B vitamins. B vitamins help the nerves. And I think a lot of horses have nerve discomfort, especially if their body is tense all the time. So B vitamins help the nerves be more comfortable. So yeah, there is a lot of great options nutritionally and pharmaceutically to help horses who have chronic anxiety.
Yeah, well, it's interesting talking about the anxiety and tension. My friend has a mare who was recently diagnosed with kissing spine. The mare's gonna be 19 this year, but she's always been an anxious mare, like just her body and tense, and we think that's of course made the kissing spine worse. But I wonder if she added the magnesium and the tryptophan and the B vitamins, as if that would help as well.
Yeah,
So I'll mention that to her.
Yeah, especially because she's probably compensating with her muscles around the kissing spine, so that helps relax that. Yeah.
And she said she had a chiropractor out about a month ago, and she said the mare clearly felt so much better. But then with all in Texas, we've had quite a bit of cold weather, like warm, cold, and all of the horses are kind of tight right now, just because of that, the temperature cycle.
So generally with magnesium, what you want to do is gradually increase the dose until the horse starts to get soft poop, and then go down one dose from that, and then that will be your maintenance dose.
Yes.
That's kind of how you want to test is what you need. If you test your hay and really want to do all the numbers, you can do it like that. But I find that's kind of the convenient way. And if they start to get runny poop, just lower the dose. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'll pass that on. Those are great suggestions too.
Thanks.
Well, all right. I'll share this video on the actual training page and on YouTube, and then I'll put links to your Facebook page, to your book, and your not-for-profit organization as well. But Jessica, thank you so much for joining me and talking about this, and I can't wait to learn more. So I'm going to be going through and reading this, and then let you know if I have any other questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you really so much, and hope everybody enjoyed it. And yeah, contact Jessica if you have more questions, or if you guys can support her. She has so many free videos, and she has a Facebook group, and it's been so helpful to me. You've just been so helpful over the years.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much, and have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.